So some of you have probably already seen this. It's a just little intro screen I did for the Brackeys Game Jam, and then it takes you right into the game right at this point. I'm going to show you how to do that today. So the first thing I'm going to do is just drag in the art we're going to need. I'm going to need a small light source. This is going to be the main player's body. A large light source. This is going to be light that the player emits. And then just an image that's going to be the background image. So after I get those in, I'm going to create a new scene. In this scene, I'm going to immediately attach a canvas layer. Inside that canvas layer, I'm going to add a color rect. And I'm going to use this to do the fade in and fade out that we saw in that animation. This is also covered in a different tutorial I did just a while ago, a scene transition tutorial, so go ahead and check that out if you're interested. I'm going to go ahead and set the full rectangle so that takes up the full thing. I'm going to then change the color of this to be black. We're going to slide this down to fade in and slide it up to fade out. So I'm going to add a animation player. You could also animate this with tweens. I didn't show any videos covering that yet, but I probably will in the future. And I'm just going to set up a new animation. This is just going to be the intro, and it was about 10 seconds long in the original, so we're going to do that on the color rectangle. Set this. Great. About 2 seconds in it was. I'm going to fade this all the way down and set that. So that way if we drag along this, it fades in. I'm then going to attach a sprite, and this is going to be the background image. Now you could either attach a new camera, or you could just scale this down to match. If you're doing pixel art, I would actually recommend doing a new camera. However, this image isn't really pixel art. The next thing I'm going to do is create those little sprites we saw. I'm going to go ahead and create these inside of a new scene. Now in the original, I had these be kinematic bodies, and that was because it was actually the same object that I used for the actual gameplay. I just tuned off the movement controls so you couldn't move them in the intro. In this case, I'm just going to do a node 2D because we don't really need to move the kinematic. And I'm going to attach a light 2D and another light 2D. Now the first light is going to be the player's body, and I'm just going to attach that there. So the settings I had to get it to look like it did in the actual game were a texture scale of 0.25, and a brightness of 1.5. I also added shadows, but because there's going to be no occlusion in this, that's not really important. So for the second light, I went ahead and attached the bigger light. They had a scale of 1 and an energy of 0.75. So I'm going to go ahead and just toss these inside of here really quick. Now if I were to save this and run it, you'll see this. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this color rectangle and scale it all the way back up. And then I'm going to set this to be the default animation that plays. So if you run it, it'll fade in and you have the two lights. Now you might notice these lights are a bit smaller than the original. I'll actually get to that in a bit. I did that through code. I scaled them up, and you notice the further down they are, the bigger they are, the further up they are, the smaller they are. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So next thing I'm going to do is attach a path. And I'm going to do path 2D, and then just below that, a path follow. Now the path, you just go ahead and set points. I'm going to do points where I want it to move. Let's say I just want it to come up here, circle around, and I'm actually going to make the color rectangle invisible for now. I'm going to have it circle around, come up here, go down, back around. This isn't the exact path it followed in the original, but it's close and it's fine. Now you notice these are kind of sharp edges. If you want to smooth them out, just go ahead and hold shift, click and drag. And then you could change these. You could, if you're not holding shift, you can move around the point. If you're holding shift, you could smooth out the curve. Okay, so now that we have a path drawn, I'm going to go ahead and attach one of these lights to the path follow. And then I'm going to set the position to 0, 0. This is going to then have this follow the path when I change it. So if I change the offset, he's going to move along. Now you notice this changes between 0 and whatever massive number is the end of the path. That's actually why I use the unit offset to animate it instead. That way if I end up changing the path, he still goes to the end of the path. So in this animation player, I'm just going to go ahead and at 2 seconds, I'm going to have path follow, unit offset 0. Then at 6.5 seconds, which is what I had in the original, I'm just going to set unit offset to 1, which is the end of the path. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now if we play this, you'll see that it's moving along. And then you could change the speed, you could change all the different stuff. If you want to change the path, that'll change a good portion of the stuff. Like let's say we wanted him to, at this point, go down, and we wanted him to come up here, like this. You could just drag the points around, change it to whatever you want, and he'll move from the start to the end. Now let's go ahead and look at this. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and create a second path for the second little light here. Then make sure his transformation is set to 0, 0. That way, when you move the path, he follows the path. Okay, so I'm going to set the animation player, set it at 2, path follow, save it as 0, go to the end, set it to 1, and set that. So you could actually set up more points if you wanted to have more control over it. I'm just going to have these guys move at consistent speed throughout. So I'm going to run this. And I made the first one invisible. So there we go, we got the second one moving. That looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the first one back on. And I'm going to play that, see what it looks like. That's cool. So I'm going to set this back on. And then I'm going to fade it out after they finish. So at 6.5 seconds, I'm going to set the color rectangle. At 8 seconds, I'm going to have it faded out. Just go ahead and set that. I then attached a script to this, and this would just change the scene. So we don't need any of this. I'm just going to go ahead and make a full screen really quick. Actually, we need to attach this. So I did animation finish, connect to that, and then I did get tree dot change scene, and then whatever your first scene was called, res. But this wouldn't even change the scene. It's the same scene. So that would call as soon as the animation's done playing. Now I'm going to show you how I scaled up. So basically I went into here, I attached a script, and then I set a max height. This isn't necessarily the max height they could go, but the max height, the smallest, what we want the smallest point to be. So if I go ahead and do a point 2D, position 2D, you could see transform. In the Y, I'm probably going to have my max height at 0, or even a bit more than that. So max height, -50 or something, or min height. The max height is going to be, let's do 650. So -50 to 650. So inside here, max height, 650, min height, -50. The min size was 1.5, and the max size was 5. So basically, the lower down they are, the closer they're going to be to the max size. The higher up they are, the closer they're going to be to the min size. I did this all in a process, that way it updates automatically. And then I did their relative position based on their max height and min height. I then checked if the relative position was smaller than 0 or greater than 1, and I set that to be 0 or 1 respectively. I then had two variables. These were the height different and size different. I then used these along with a function that I came up with to get the size that I wanted the characters to be. Now, I got this function using the linear graph function in algebra, and it was quite complex-ish, but it's going to be really difficult to explain exactly how I got this function. So if enough of you are interested, I could actually go more into it in a different video, just covering how I get some of my functions. A lot of it is using linear algebra and trigonometry, if you guys want me to go into that. So I just set the scale to the size, and then I'm going to go ahead and check this. So we run it, and now they should scale up and down based on their position. And yeah, it gives me a similar effect I had in the original. If I want to change it, I could go into here, and this is changing the scene back to the current scene, so it's going to repeat. But if I wanted to change it, I could just set the max height, min height. I could even scale them down. I could do, let's say they were a bit too big, I could do 4.5. I could run this, and they're a bit smaller. That's how I animated my trailer for the Brackeys Game Jam. So I hope you all had fun watching me do this, and I hope you learned something in it, and I'll see you in the next video.